paid good money to see this movie. When they go out to a theater, they want cold sodas, hot popcorn, and no monsters in the projection booth.
Everyone pretend podcasting isn't boring.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
Nosotros somos la única banda de metal de mujeres. Influenciado exclusivamente por nuestras emociones. Es Depressive Suicidal Black Metal. Vamos a registrar psicofonías, además de gritos en el bosque. Será nuestro reanimante. Mata, asesina. Mata, asesina. Mata, asesina. Despierta, despierta. Te va a encantar todo esto, güey.
Hey folks, welcome to a special episode of The Projection Booth. I'm your host, Mike White. On this episode, I'm talking with screenwriter Barry Keating. He is the force behind Invoking Yell, the new film by Patricio Valladares. It is a Chilean horror film set back in the 1990s, kind of a throwback to the Blair Witch Project, where it is three women who will go out into the woods to shoot their demo tape for their black metal band. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the interview.
How did you get involved in screenwriting?
I started as a journalist, writing for a local newspaper here in my hometown. And then I went to university to study screenwriting. And while I was there, I was working in a video store. And this guy came in and we were just chatting about like movies and games and stuff. And he was like, hey, I'm an editor of a video game magazine, PlayStation. And he said, do you want a job? So I sacked off university and I took a job as a journalist at this PlayStation 2 magazine. And from there, I hopped to DVD review, to do news editing, feature editing. I started writing total film, did a bit of freelance for Empire. Then I moved to online and I segued into game development there. But all the way in the background was always writing my own stuff, talking to people. And I got this opportunity to do a bunch of comics based on IPs. One was for Day of the Dead, Battle Royale was another one, and then Demons. And they were little sort of mini comics that would sit inside special releases from Arrow Video back when they wanted to do these little cool little inlays. And they got nominated for an award. I wound up in Italy talking to a bunch of Serbian guys who had just made a horror movie called Zone of the Dead. And they were like, hey, we want to do a sequel called Wrath of the Dead. And I was like, yes, I'm over here. Give me the job. And we started talking. And I ended up working with those guys and Ken Faree on that script. It never happened. And there were many other stories of different projects I worked on. At one point, I was working with Brian Yuzna on adapting Reanimator into a comic series. I know it had been done in the past. We were going to try and redo the movies and then fill in the gaps in between. And that didn't happen. And then I stayed focused on writing game stories because that's pretty much what I do for my day job, which is game narrative. And and then the Serbian guys called me up and I just was on the kind of cusp of moving to Madrid for a job. And they said, hey, look, we got this film, we're shooting it. The script needs a bit of work. We've got a few months. Do you want to do it? And I was yeah, of course. And so I took it on and I looked on the script. And I didn't really think in it, to be perfectly honest with you, because there was so many false starts. I'm not sure what's happening. About like 7 months later, I was home from work and there was an email with a trailer for the movie, which turned out to be Killer Mermaid, which was the first thing I'd written that got produced. And I just remember looking at the trailer going, wow, this is an actual movie. It's a real movie. I didn't realize this was going to happen. And that, I went over to Belgrade, and when I was there, I signed on to another movie, and then I kind of came back, and I had a friend who was a producing partner of the Serbian guys, he had put me in touch with Patricio. Patricio and I worked on a screenplay for a sort of home invasion horror called Breath. We couldn't get that off the ground. And then we kept talking, and that ultimately led to the sort of creation of Downhill. And once we wrote Downhill together and shot that, that was the beginning of our sort of working relationship, when we've just done so much stuff and made like Night World, Ghost of Gareth, and Embryo. And this. It's been a bit of a roundabout journey to get into screenwriting, but it's always what I wanted to do, but it just took a little longer than I had planned.
What was it like the first time you heard somebody say your dialogue?
Oh, I died. I was mortified, actually, to be honest. I remember the first time it was at the premiere of Killer Mermaid, and it was in this big, massive place called the Sava Center in Belgrade. And you're talking like a couple of thousand people. And I just remember sinking into the seat. And just because of, I don't know, it was so crazy to hear it. But I was just like, oh my God, I wish I had to change that. I don't like the way that sounds at all. No, why did I write that? I was sitting just having that panic in the seat, but eventually got over that. But yeah, now it's cool to see what people do with the dialogue, what they do with the script, and what they take from what's on the page and how they turn that into a performance. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, the very first time, I think I was like, oh man, maybe I chose the wrong career path.
You talked a little bit about working with Patricio, but what's that working relationship like? How do you guys go back and forth as far as the ideas, the shaping of everything?
We've been working together, I think maybe it's been a decade now. We constantly communicate with each other on Facebook and on WhatsApp, just sending stuff back and forth, messages and this. But basically, how we've always communicated is he might have an idea, or I might have an idea, and then we'll start kicking it around back and forth. We'll create a document, bounce it back and forth. And then we'll flesh out the treatment and whatnot together. And then, because once we have that, we'll write the script and I'll send it to him and he'll give me his notes. So it really is a back and forth thing. But the funny thing is, I don't speak Spanish. And Patricia understands English great, but we don't really jump on calls. But we are able to write it really well. So we communicate via text, which I'm sure people think is a bit of an odd relationship. But I always say to my wife, I really must learn Spanish because I've been working together with Patricia for so long. But it is very much a ping pong session where we push stuff back and forth. I do remember with Downhill, we had finished Breath and we were throwing it around and seeing what was happening. And then we were talking about, wouldn't it be cool to do something in the world of extreme sports? And we got talking about different types of things. Downhill mountain biking, you're right in the forest, and generally the forest is where creepy, mad shit happens. So maybe let's just go with that. And that's how we started working on that one, bouncing ideas back and forth. And then I remember with Embryo, which was a mad one, where we had the idea for us, started working on a script. And then it was basically like COVID hit. We'd only managed to shoot, I think it was maybe 25 minutes of actual film footage. And then we were like, when are we going to be able to do this? So I started looking at the script and we started rewiring it essentially. And then he was able to shoot loads of stuff at his home with just himself and his daughter and his wife. And it was come out with Frankenstein, this thing together. But we did, and it played at Fright Fest. Hilariously, it played at Fright Fest, and it was an online version of the festival. And the subtitles that we had in it didn't trigger. So I think what happened was it was like these auto-generated subtitles started triggering, and I remember just following the screening like what was being said made no sense whatsoever. I was just like, listen, there's nothing we can do about it. Just go with it. And everybody could laugh at it. Like, but yeah, it was a painful experience.
You talked about how when you wrote Killer Mermaid or rewrote that one, just went into the void. You didn't even know it was happening until, it came back to you. When it comes to these films that you're making with Patricio, are you going to the set or are you just handing them over and saying, okay, good luck, have fun and chill?
For whatever reason, it's always hard to make that trip. One day we'll get the opportunity to fly over and do a shoot, whatever, something like that. We work on so. But yeah, it's a great working relationship and it's worked really so far. But yeah, there are some things about it that I wish that we could change, which is like getting on set and hanging out and going over for the shoot. I would have loved to have been there for Invoking 3 days, shooting this thing in the woods. And Downhill looked great as well. But look, I get to live vicariously through all the pictures and the messages that they send me. And you're like, all right, okay. Like, I'm okay with that. No, I was going to say, but there's another guy that Patricia had worked with in the past, Andrea, and he's an Italian writer. And he was posting a message on Facebook the other day, going like, I've written 14 movies, and I've never once been on a set or never once met the actors that have been in the movies. So I was like, hey, we have the same thing going on.
So where did the idea for Invoking Yell come from?
I think it's a bit of a shame Patricio wasn't here, but basically he had been making a bunch of movies, and then he had made one movie, and we had a conversation with Alan Jones. He was in a bit of a weird place. We didn't know what to do creatively. And so we got to talking about stuff back and forth. And he was saying like the idea of this love letter to the Blair Witch, this sort of 90s, and he's a huge black metal fan. And it came from that whole conversation about what if this happened, and these three girls went out to the woods to record the psychophony, and we just ran with it from there. And I knew, like, you know, this was a zero budget, and it was just like flying by the seat of your pants. And we were just come up with, like, we knew the limitations of what we had, which was like very little. So let's try to write to very little, and that was it. And I think really what carries the film through from start to finish are the performances. And I think the relationship that you see on screen between the three girls is just, they really elevate. They're just so good. And you believe them, and you do feel like you're in this, just watching these kind of 90s teenagers, wannabe black metal legends doing something awfully stupid that leads to something horrible. Like, so yeah, but they sold it so well. They were great. So
when did you finish the screenplay, and when did they shoot?
I can't remember the timeline, but basically how this one worked in particular was Patricia's idea, and then we had story structure back and forth. And then because he was going to shoot it in Spanish over there, we go through the script, talk through it, and then I would suggest fix this, change this, move this here, things like that. So that's how we wrote this one, because he was really in a hurry and he wanted to get out and do it. But that's how that one worked. It was fairly quickly. He knew he had the money. It was a few months of dealing with the script, and then, okay, we've got the money, and off we go. It was like a super micro budget job. So there wasn't a big lapse in time between finishing the script and shooting.
And how much later do you see it? And do you see it with subtitles first, or just purely in Spanish?
The whole thing how I saw this one kind of generate in front of me was, first of all, like he showed me some of the footage. It's cool. And then the big thing that we went back and forth on quite a lot was the look, to make it look like that. And it was this 90s VHS, that Blair Witch vibe about it. And so we went back and forth a lot on that, just sharing different sort of effects and how it would go, like what we thought he was, what did this, how does that look? And we get there, and eventually we hit upon it. It's like, that's the look. That's it. Don't touch anything from there. That's what you need to do. And then, yes, we guys back and forth, and then he would give me I saw a version with like rough translation subtitles on it. I was like, okay, this is cool. And then he got a guy who did a full-on proper translation of the script, which was really great and really helpful. So yeah, the different stages, trimming thing here, keep it all a little bit too long here, let's cut it back. I think the leaner the better with stuff like this, especially considering you've got 56 minutes of just the relationship between before the needle drop.
You're writing this over in Ireland, he's shooting it over in Chile. With something like a found footage film, it feels like the sets or the setting would be really crucial. Is he going out and taking photos, or is he just describing things, or is it just one?
No, he knows where to go. He's fairly good with the sort of the location. Some of them were shot around there, down hills, shot out in the forest and stuff. And then he had the bus. So he's pretty good at finding places and creepy things. he goes hiking and quite a bit. So I think he's got a good eye for this sort of stuff.
Have you seen the movie with an audience?
No. And it's one of those weird ones where it was doing the rounds for all the festivals, and I just haven't had the opportunity. Now, it's not out here in Ireland yet, so I'm hoping I do get the opportunity to see it with an audience. I've seen it a few times now, just watching it at home, and I would like to see it. But I think, truthfully, I've only ever seen 2 or 3 films I've done with an audience. Like, I'm in a weird position where it's like you're the guy, you do the script, and then you hand it over and stuff like that. I'm still thankful for where I am, but yeah, there's a few things I would certainly love to improve.
Are you still your own harshest critic when you're watching these, going, I should have rewritten that, I should have changed that?
Oh yeah, all the time. I do that with everything I've written. What's in the day job is the same. I think I'm currently one of the writers on the new James Bond game for IOI Interactive, and when I'm testing that, like always, you're always super critical. everything. I wish you could always, change it and stuff like that. Yeah. I do find, that I'm constantly re-listening to stuff. A couple of times, like some of the movies I've done have appeared on TV, and I've stuck them on just to see, and I was like, oh, I wish I'd changed that. But look, I think it's probably not a bad thing. If I was sitting there watching something, yes, that's the best I could have done, or that's amazing, I probably shouldn't be doing what I'm doing.
What is the difference writing between movies and video games?
Oh, I suppose the biggest difference is that it's when you're in control. You as the writer and the director, you're in control of everything. From the pacing to what the audience sees, the whole lot. And when it comes to a video game, it's a player-facing experience. They're on the sticks. They're the ones controlling the game. So you have to take into account everything. And even if you've got a very linear, straightforward narrative game, the player will do things to defy the narrative. And that's the biggest. And then, of course, with games, you use so many different tools. You might write cinematics, which would look like a screenplay. That's fine. That's not the easiest stuff to write, but the one that looks most familiar. And then you would have all of the lines that the non-playable characters might say, hey, he's over there. No, that's all written Excel sheets, thousands upon thousands of lines. You're using everything. You use bespoke software. You might write with Microsoft Word. A lot of studios have tools, some of which will look a lot like a final draft screenplay. But yeah, it's a bit of everything. It's a very Frankensteinian process, but it's fun, very challenging.
I know you probably can't talk a lot about the James Bond video game, but I'm curious with something like that, which has such a rich history. Are you doing individual scenes? Are you doing that kind of overall story? Because I'm sure that you have to pay a lot of lip service to Ian Fleming and all the things that have come before.
Yeah, I can't really say too much, but what it is it's an origin story, and there is a really great story in place. And yeah, like we're making what we believe is a really great Bond story. And of course, there are going to be tips of the hat to everything, stuff like that. But yeah, it's fun. I am NDA'd up to the hilt, so it's so hard to talk about it.
Yeah, no, I can totally understand. It's such a huge IP, and it's only been going on since the mid-50s.
There's a lot of expectations, and we're aware of that. And yeah, it's fun. It's come along. It's really great.
So that's the day job. What's the next movie for you?
I'm not sure at the moment. Like I've done a couple of scripts. I wrote an action script back at the start of the year. I think that's like trundling through development. I'm not really sure what's happening. I just did a polished job recently on another project for a producer I worked with again on Night World, Lars Kirchi. He's been a great guy. He's opened the doors for me actually on a lot of different opportunities. In terms of my own stuff, I've got 2 or 3 different projects that I am developing, and I'm hoping to have scripts done by early next year. It's finding the time, because when you're writing during the day, whatever it is I decide to focus on as like my next project, whether it's a spec script or something like that, I have to really be into it, because I have to be able to come down here at sort of 8:30 at night after I put the kids to bed, and I'm sitting right for like 2-3 hours, depending on how much juice is in the tank. Really, that's the truth. But yeah, a bunch of irons in fires, and trying to see where I can take things.
Yeah, hopefully something hits for you soon. And in the meantime, it sounds like quite a good challenge with the James Bond game.
Yeah, it is. It's good fun. It's a great team, good people to work with. Just trying to make the best game we can as possible.
Mr. Keating, thank you so much for your time. This was great talking with you.
Yeah, likewise. I really appreciate it. All right.
sawdust.